information, a little background on the project, because it's probably been a while since we've been here last. The project site's about 423 acres. It's located at 140 Galley Hill Road, right here in town of Deerpark. It's within the rural residential zoning district. Currently, it's a place of worship there with temple buildings, religious schools, accessory structures. Approximately 70 acres is currently developed. We have a lot of vegetation, landscaping. It's going to remain largely in natural vegetated state. We have existing lighting on buildings and parking areas and entrances. We have an existing water supply system with a community well. It's got 2 groundwater wells that serve the buildings. I believe the visitor center is served by a separate well number 4. We have an existing 18,400 gallon per day wastewater treatment plant. It's a surface, it discharges to subsurface absorption fields. The visitor center itself is on its own septic system. It's about 1,200 gallons per day. That's currently what's on the site at this time. From a seeker perspective and an environmental impact perspective, a full EAF was submitted back in January 2018 for this particular project. Lead agency was declared in April 2018. The scoping document for the DEIS was back in June 2018, and it was filed on January 2019. Public hearing for the DEIS was had back in April 2019. DEIS comments period closed in May of 2019. We have received all those comments, and we have responded to each and every single one of them inside the FEIS that's been provided to the planning board. So what's involved with this particular project that you see here? We've kind of color-coded everything to help out with identification of buildings on the site. So anything that's hatched here in gray is an existing building that has an existing certificate of occupancy. Anything that's shown here in orange So here's gray, these are gray buildings. Here's orange, here's an orange building here. Anything that's essentially in the orange color is a building or structure with an open building permit. So in other words, we're still in the middle of construction. There's a building permit that was filed. That building permit is still open. It has not been closed yet. And then essentially what you see here in yellow are all the proposed buildings and structures that are associated with this particular project that's before the board at this time. And anything in blue right here, as you can see, these are planning board approved building structures that have not actually yet been constructed, but they have been approved. So that's an overall visual of the map. So what we're looking to do here is a proposed music hall, 2 parking garages, A and C, located in this general location in the northern portion of the site here. There's another proposed temple that's shown here. We have a glass atrium being added to the existing educational buildings. We are also upgrading the wastewater treatment plant to accommodate the future water withdrawal on this property, which will be somewhere between 98 and 100,000 gallons per day. Those studies have been completed. They'll be submitted to the DEC shortly, along with a water withdrawal permit. This is all part of the process for the environmental impact statement. So again, we got about a 920 seat music hall. It's shown in this location right here. The new temple, as I mentioned before, I just want to make sure I'm going over everything. We've got a concrete plaza with sculpture and fountain. It's back over here. The glass atrium we discussed. We'll be resurfacing and reconfiguring Lake Drive a little bit within the site. Parking garage A, which is located here, will have 777 car spaces plus 24 bus spaces. Parking garage C, which is located here, will have 867 car spaces plus 26 car spaces. Parking garage C, if I'm not mistaken, is generally required to meet the current existing operations of the facility. There's inadequate parking on this facility and this site as it exists. Parking garage A would be for any additional visitors in the future that are associated with proposed music hall and any other visits to the site that are required. So there's a few other things we'll be doing. There's some relocation, resizing of previously approved storage buildings and sheds. We've got some gazebos that we're also putting up and whatnot. These are smaller portions of the project. We have extensive stormwater treatment systems that are being proposed in the northern portion of the site here to handle all the impervious surface associated with the project. We are also constructing a new lake next to the existing lake that's shown over here. We will get all our DEC required permits for that particular portion of the project. The wastewater treatment system in this area here will be upgraded. It will continue to be a subsurface discharge, meaning that wastewater will be conveyed to piping under the ground. It will seep back into the ground itself. That would be the treated effluent. There'll be no surface discharge associated with that wastewater treatment plant. We are also proposing a 286 kilowatt rooftop solar system to try to handle energy needs within the site itself. And we're also proposing extensive off-site wetland mitigation, some lighting and landscaping, and some additional access roads as shown here to connect the site and make it more convenient for access. So that's an overview of the site plan as it stands right there. It's worth noting some major changes or changes discussed since the DEIS was submitted. Parking garage A has actually been reduced in size from 1,140 stalls to 801 stalls. Previously we had a surface discharge for the wastewater treatment plant. Now it's a subsurface discharge. Again, storage buildings have been downsized into 2 sheds to reduce grading and disturbance. Fire protection improvements have also been added. We've added hydrants, fire pump houses have been constructed, fire apparatus turning analyses have been added. We've revised our stormwater pollution prevention plan to have more detail and to comply with today's regulations. And again, we have off-site wetland mitigation that we're working with the Army Corps of Engineers and the DEC to finalize. So it's worth noting that since the town has actually seen the DEIS, we've actually reduced some of the scope of work. Not significantly, but it has been a reduction. And so that's overall what the town sees before them right now. Tonight, what we would be looking for from the board essentially would be if they would consider adopting the findings of the FEIS. And we also should note that we did receive a comment letter from Mr. Farr's office as it relates to this recent submittal that was made for the FEIS. We went through those comments. We take no exception to them. They were essentially minor housekeeping items. It would be standard part and parcel for most projects. And that concludes my general presentation.
Thank you.
Mr. Morganti,
Yes.
is there anything that's been added to the plan that was not essentially proposed or on the plan when the public hearing was done for the scoping?
Not that I'm aware of. As a matter of fact, I believe what I just said was, I think some of the scope of the work has been reduced. We tried to pay careful attention to create this plan color-coded for the town so that we could show like all the existing and proposed structures that are on the site to help the town understand the full scope of what's there plus what's being proposed. At least, let me say this, Mr. Pulaski, nothing that I'm aware of.
Mike, why don't you summarize my comments and your responses? That's probably the easiest way to go as opposed to us reading through everything.
Sure. Just give me a second to get to them. All right, so comment one is just an overview of the project, which I have provided to the planning board tonight. Items 2, 3, and 4 essentially are dealing with the DEC and Department of Health requirements for approval as it relates to the water and wastewater systems. Those are outside agencies. That information is well prepared and already in the EIS, but we will be submitting to those agencies for outside approvals. We take no exception to the comments that are noted by Jim's office, which essentially says...
So, just
yes.
to clarify too, is that the outside agencies cannot take any action until the lead agency adopts the FEIS and the findings.
That is 100% correct, to complete the secret process.
Right.
We can't go to the outside agencies before that's completed.
Right.
So that's essentially the first page, 1 through 4, which you're looking at there. 5 is talking about a sprinkler design. That should be a condition resolved prior to approval of building permit. We take no exception to that. That's 100% fine. We'll provide that information. Any conditions of any permitting with the Army Corps of Engineers and or the DEC as it relates to both the lake and the offsite mitigation will be added to the plans, but again, we can't do that until we get that information from those agencies. So we're down pretty much now to number 7 already. We had provided an updated ecological report as a part of the FEIS. Any important notes or whatnot that are related to that report, we will include on the plan as notes as well. 9 is also talking about, again, the fire suppression system. We'll add the note to the site plan. That's not an issue. Again, these are minor housekeeping items. 10, applicant's revised FEIS includes an updated traffic study. So Mr. Farr goes on to note that there's essentially not a major change, if any change, associated with the traffic prior to this construction versus post-construction. We'll make sure that all those mitigated requirements are shown on the final site plan and included as conditions of the final site plan approval as the board sees fit. We will be working again with the DEC on the lake and the dam, but again, we need a seeker action to be completed prior to us being able to do that. Number 12 discusses some boring information that we should be submitting to the building department. We can submit that sooner rather than later. That's not an issue. We'll make sure we take care of that. 13 is talking about the cut and fill analysis for the site. Essentially, we have pretty much a balanced site, and if there is any additional fill that's remaining after the project's developed, we have plenty of room within the site to grade it in and fill it in as required. And then if you look at number 15, these are, again, minor comments. A is taking a look at making sure we have elevations that are labeled correctly on the driveway. So spot elevations being proposed at the top of the dam. Again, we deal with the DEC, we'd have to put that information in the plans anyways. Making sure that we have details for items such as guide rail and fencing. If we have fall protection in certain areas that are greater than a 42-inch drop. On the lighting plan, we have to add some isolux curves just for the pole-mounted lights. And maybe provide some standard details for pavement sections for the work. That would be item 15. Again, we'll take care of all that, very minor, no issues. And regarding the stormwater pollution prevention plan, you have similar type of style comments there where we just have to indicate, probably with some labels, where we're proposing level spreaders, making sure we have all our construction details associated with berms and outlet elevations on the plans and in the SWIP report itself. Temporary erosion sediment control measures such as diversion swales, slope stabilization as check dams, we'll make sure that's all on there, and some construction sequencing notes. I will note the last page, letter E, we actually do have a no effect finding letter from SHPO, and I will provide that to the town tomorrow. I'll make sure I email it to you. That's kind of a general overview and summary of Jim's comments, and we don't take any exception to them. We feel that the comments are fairly minuscule. They're more housekeeping items, but we will definitely make sure that's all dealt with for final review prior to any site plans being signed by this board.
So procedurally, just so the board understands, and Glenn, correct me if I'm wrong, or Mike, because the secret process is a little bit complicated, is we're at the point where the final environmental impact statement, or we can either decide to, hold this part of it open, take some time to review, or do it tonight. The next part would be development of a finding statement. So the finding statement would basically say, you guys need to get all these permits. The DEC permits, the Department of Health permits, there's Orange County Health Department permits, Army Corps permits, you guys need to do all this other stuff. And get, if it requires it, site plan approval on the new structures, which would require a separate submittal, or a building permit. So the process, is not going to be concluded, this meeting or the next meeting, but at some point we have to adopt the finding statement to close the environmental process so that the applicant can go and continue their permitting process. Because until seeker is closed, none of the other regulatory agencies will close out their permits, and until they close their permits, we can't give site plan approval. So it's like, to some extent, the chicken and the egg. So we need to get this closed at some point, not tonight, but hopefully the next couple months, and then they can move on and start cleaning this up.
Just so the board's aware too, I agree with everything that Jim said. This is just you acknowledging that we've provided a significant amount of information that this board would feel comfortable at this point being able to see, you follow what I'm saying, that there'll be no adverse environmental impact, or that at the very least we've mitigated what those impacts might be, so that therefore there is no adverse impact. This is not a final approval for this project. We still have a ways to go. We have to go to our outside agencies, get those approvals, clean up the plans, and then potentially deal with site plan approvals for specific portions of the project that might be required by this board. So it really just allows us to deal with the outside agencies and get more information to come back and give to the board, essentially.
So from my perspective, with the understanding that everything that's being proposed, constructed, or basically identified on this map was on the map at the time that the public hearing was conducted for the environmental review. As long as that is true, then, basically what I think happened was after that public hearing, Dragon Springs submitted a DEIS, the draft environmental impact statement. The engineer that was then representing the planning board was insistent that the next step be a supplemental draft environmental impact statement. Now, I've spoken to Mr. Morganti, I've spoken to Mr. Farr, I've spoken to probably 4 or 5 other engineers who do this for various municipalities. A supplemental DEIS is almost never done, because the whole purpose of having a draft environmental impact statement, and please gentlemen, correct me if I'm wrong, the whole purpose of having a draft environmental impact statement followed by a final environmental impact statement is because the things that are identified in the draft are fixed or identified as to how they will be fixed or addressed in the final. It is not uncommon for there to be a supplemental final environmental impact statement. Because if initially, and I'm just making stuff up, but if initially Amazon proposes a 4-story warehouse that's going to cover 5 acres, and they realize that what they really want is a 7-story warehouse that covers 10 acres, they could request to submit a supplemental final environmental impact statement that basically addresses the change, the increase between the 2 projects. It's generally not done between the draft environmental impact statement and the final environmental impact statement. So the next logical step for this board, again, from my perspective, and with the caveat being that what's being proposed on this color-coded map is the same information or the same items that were discussed at the time of the public hearing that resulted in a draft environmental impact statement. There's no reason that this board could not, at an appropriate time, go through that information and potentially issue a finding statement that basically says the environmental issues have been identified and they've either been determined to have no environmental impact statement or impact, or to the extent that they do or would have an environmental impact, they have been mitigated to the extent possible by the applicant, and this is how. That's what the FEIS will basically state. So, based on the fact that there's only 3 of you here tonight, based upon the fact that it's been, I think by Mr. Morganti's statement that it was 2018 or 19 the last time a document was submitted to you, so it's been 8-ish years. The board should take its time, not unreasonably, but take its time, go through the information, make sure that in fact the EIS matches up to the FEIS, that everything is addressed, and again, most importantly, that the things on this map are the things that were on that map. And once that's done, then we can have a conversation about a finding statement, and once the finding statement is adopted, with the FEIS being adopted, then the applicant would be able to go to those other agencies to seek their approvals. Some of what they will need from those other agencies would be required before you would grant site plan approval. Other might be a condition of site plan approval, so it'd be a conditional final approval. And folks have dealt with all of those issues previously. The thing that's a little different about this is because of its size and the various impacts, it started with a positive declaration, and that's why we ended up with the scoping hearing and the draft environmental impact statement. So, I mean, my personal opinion is that you shouldn't, notwithstanding Mr. Morganti's request, you shouldn't consider any kind of finding statement or agreement or anything tonight. This was more a function of bringing it back to the board, updating where they've come since the last time they were here, identifying the fact that there have been no additions since the last time they were here, and then basically rejuvenating the process so that they can move forward. I will tell the board that I had the opportunity, along with Mr. Farr and Mr. Morganti, along with the 2 representatives of Dragon Springs, to tour the facility somewhat. And I can tell you that as far as the items that are identified as either being under construction or fully built, they are all on that map. There was nothing that was there's nothing that was underway that was visible that is not shown on that plan. And there were a couple of items, I think, right, Mr. McGinty, I think you'll confirm that there were some things that were kind of out of place on the plan, so they've been moved on this plan compared to what was previous. And for example, there were some storage sheds for equipment and things that didn't appear to be on the plan at all. I believe they've been added, but they were all anticipated at the time of that scoping. But I just want the board to be aware that we were accommodated that ability to view the site. And I would also indicate to the board that representatives of Dragon Springs have indicated a willingness to allow members of the planning board to visit the site so that you can compare the map with what's on the ground. You can see what they've done to date. The only caveat, and this is more of a legal thing for me, is that no more than 2 of you can go at a time, because otherwise we would have a quorum.
Thank you. So, with that information, I guess the board is not going to take any action tonight.
I shouldn't have let in by expecting you to take action tonight. I should have said otherwise, but that's okay.
Any other comments from Mr. Farr?
No, Mr. Morganti went over them all. There were cleanup items, and like I said, the document was substantially complete. And again, this process is basically to get to the point where they can go to get the regulatory approvals. This is not the planning board's or my firm's last bite at the apple. If we see things in the future, we can still address them, as well as the other regulatory agencies.
Thank you. Mr. Morgan, any other comments?
I have none. I just would ask if it's a sufficient amount of time for the board, if we reappear at the August meeting, for you guys to have enough time to review all the documentation that's been provided, have discussions with your consultants if needed.
I would say if you want to tentatively schedule it for the 4th Wednesday in August, that might be enough time, but what we'll do is, at the interim meeting, just to the extent of asking the board whether they're comfortable with you coming back at that second meeting in August, we'll have that inquiry and then we'll confirm with you.
That works for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is it possible to submit questions or comments in writing, and who to?
No.
Okay.
Any comments from the board? Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time tonight.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, next on the agenda, the minutes, but we have to hold off. Okay. Comments from Mr. Block?
I don't have anything else.
I would just suggest if any of the board members do want to go, we just contact you.
Sure, if you guys want to reach out to me, I'll make contact with Mr. Mercanti and or Mr. Browder, and we'll try to set that up.
Okay.